Hi, everybody. Kimberly Ray here with the Marine Conservation Network. Welcome aboard. And I hope you got all my notifications for going live. We had some technical issues in the beginning, but we're here today with Matt Bille, and he is a author and a historian. He has two books out. He has one called Rumors of Existence, Newly Discovered, Supposedly Extinct, and Unconfirmed Inhabitants of the Animal Kingdom. The other one is Shadows of Existence, Discoveries of Speculations in Zoology. And we're talking to him today because he has learned a lot about the whales out there. And I know you guys love the whales, the cetaceans, the humpbacks, the dolphins, the orcas, all the whales that you can think of. And he has helped with a lot of information that has come out on tagging them and new discoveries. So we're going to be talking to him today, and hopefully you guys get some inspiration to help out there and get some more effort going. So I'm going to bring him in, and everybody welcome Matt Bille. Well, thank you for taking time out of your day, Matt. I'm sorry with the technical issues, but we can go ahead and get started and start talking to our audience out there. How are you doing over there in Colorado? How are you hanging out?
We're pretty good. We're pretty good. Staying close to home, of course, but good.
Good. Okay, well, great. I want to tell a little bit to our guests about who you are and what you do. If you could just give them a little bit of your background as to how you're involved in this field. How did you get started? You have a PhD in what area?
None.
Okay, that's okay. That's good. That makes a good point. So go ahead.
Me, I came out of the Air Force some years back, shall we say, and I do consulting for a living. But I grew up in Florida by the ocean. I always went to the beach. I always wanted to fish, all that. Saw dolphins on occasion. Went on school trips, of course, to things like Miami Aquarium that they had down there.
Yeah.
So I've always had that interest in whales, dolphins, what have you. And so, about 1995, I sat down and wrote a book on one of my greatest interests, which was animals that were new or that maybe were extinct and maybe not, or were kind of out on the fringe. I've always loved that kind of thing. So that was Rumors of Existence, and I wrote it up. And it included several items on whales and dolphins, because one of the things that people are surprised to learn is that we're still finding new ones. And I updated it in Shadows of Existence in 2006. I've been updating it on my blog ever since. And I try to keep up on these things. And it's just a fascinating field to follow. There's a lot to be learned.
That's wonderful. And you bring up a good point. You said you don't have a PhD, and that's really important because that's what MCN is all about. Is we're trying to interpret a common language for the common person who doesn't have a PhD, but they can understand what's going on and get involved. So do you feel that it would be good to have a lot more citizen scientists available so that we can all possibly join together and exchange information?
Citizen science, I think in almost any field, they'll tell you it's still important. There are thousands and thousands of people who participate in things like bird counts and butterfly counts that are very important to science. And the contribution I like to think that I've made and that other non-specialist authors have made is that since I had to learn this from a standing start, talk to the right experts, read the right books, all that sort of thing, I can then turn around and put it in my book in terms pretty much everybody can understand, because that's how I learned it. And what I find is universally, the leading scientists, PhD or not, the leading scientists in the field are happy to talk to you if you show that you know what you're talking about and your questions are intelligent. So that's something I love doing.
That's wonderful. And it's good that we all communicate and get the right information out there, because there's a lot of fake news, as we know from experience from all different areas of news. You have to be very careful and talk to the right people. And that's why I wanted to talk to you today. Now, you said that you got a little bit of background of going to Miami Seaquarium. That's where I used to go, believe it or not. I used to go to Miami Seaquarium every weekend when I was a kid. That was my first love right there. And you've been doing that for quite a while, but is that what got you interested in what you've been doing recently with the monitoring and tagging of the whales? How did you get from going there to what you're doing now?
Well, what I saw and experienced growing up, sparked my initial interest. Something that brought me back a couple of years ago to look at a new area. When I talked to some of the leading cetologists in America for Shadows of Existence, uh, everybody said they'd like to have more data about movements, about migration, about calving grounds, all those sorts of things. And I've done some consulting for the Air Force and NASA and gained some expertise in microsatellites, very small satellites. And so a couple of years ago, I and a few colleagues started putting this together, and we went back to the cetologists and said, what do you need most? And they said contacts. They can tag whales. They can track whales through a system called Argos, but there are gaps in it. And so I started looking from the angle with the help of some wonderful colleagues. I'd like to single out a environmental scientist named Lori Baker and a satellite engineer named Steve Brune, and a biologist named Chris Round, and a few other people who were a big help to me. That's another thing you find out with this. Everybody wants to help you, whether it's their field or not. Everybody jumps in.
True. Very true.
So what happened was that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Anyway, we were able to work out some options for more frequent contacts. Not to get too technical, but the satellites they have, the Argos satellites, are in polar orbits around the Earth. And polar orbiting satellites spread out the closer you get to the equator. So there's a gap there where they can lose the signal for a couple of hours. We looked at a couple of different ways to close that, and we took it to a conference called the Conference on Small Satellites. You can look that up. It's smallsat.org, so it's easy to find, and the papers are
smallsat.org. Okay.
And that was, as far as we can tell, the first time that anybody had presented this looking from the space side to a space conference. It was presented a lot at marine mammal conferences, but we took it to the space side, and we're gratified to have a number of people say, hey, we didn't realize this was a problem that we could help with. And today there's not just the communication satellites. There are small imaging satellites and weather satellites and many other types of technologies that can be deployed in ways that will help conservation and science about whales. And so if we did nothing else, we brought that to a bigger audience. And NOAA, by the way, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, was already ahead of us on one point. They are funding a demonstration by a French small satellite to see how well this idea works. So we can't claim credit for being the only people, but it was great to be able to be the first to talk to the whole space industry and say, hey, you guys need to help.
That's fantastic. So how many whales do you have out there being monitored at the moment? Are there many different species, or are you focusing on one species?
Okay, well, I can't say I'm doing it. I'm not the one standing in the rubber boat shooting darts into killer whales, which you would think was a kind of low percentage business, but people like Robert Pittman do it all the time.
Right.
There are projects. It's not a wholesale thing. There are projects for particular whales and particular populations. Dr. Robin Baird does a lot with the false killer whales and other populations off Hawaii. Some specialize in humpbacks, tracking humpbacks along Pacific. North Atlantic right whales are a big species of concern now because they're declining in numbers. So there are particular projects where scientists will go out and tag as many as they can. I mean, it's not easy and it's not cheap. But there is more data than there's ever been.
What kind of data have you, or the people that are doing these taggings, what kind of data have they received? I mean, are they new information or anything we didn't know that we should know? What kind of new information have they come up with?
It's since Dr. Bruce Maid at Oregon State first pioneered the satellite tracking tag in 1979. What we know about whales has grown exponentially. We know some of the major calving grounds now. We know some of the, because those are places you want to single out for extra protection. We know much better where whale migrations and whale movements tend to cross shipping lanes, naval exercise areas, and so forth. I would think that the knowledge of whales gained from this and from similar things that use sonar or other tracking approaches, it's just, we know orders of magnitude more about these animals than we did 30 years ago.
Right. And then, of course, the more information that we know, the more tools we can accomplish to where we can help preserve the whales and protect them. In your opinion, why are whales so important that we know about them and preserve them and save them? Why are they so important to us in the ocean?
Oh, that's a long, that can be a long
okay,
answer.
real short. Why are they important?
I'll give you the short ones.
Okay.
First, of course, is that they're very important to the ecosystem. Whales mix the water itself when they move. They're so big that large numbers of them actually have an impact on circulation of ocean water and how the food web works and so forth. They're very important because of their place in the ecosystem. All whales are predators. They're either predators of large animals, the way killer whales and sperm whales are, or they're predators of small shrimp-like crustaceans and small fish, the way blue whales will go down in the Antarctic and load up on the krill, which are little shrimp-like creatures. So I suppose you could say they have a licensed krill, but even I wouldn't make that pun. They're important in every way to the ecosystem. And they're an important symbol, I think, of humanity's concern for animals and for the oceans. There's the whales themselves, who are very intelligent, very social beings, and we're still learning a lot more about that. And there's the fact that human beings tried very hard, to wipe them out. With some, we think normally about the Yankee whalers back in the 1800s.
Right, exactly.
But the whales pretty much withstood that. What they didn't withstand was the factory fleets after World War II, the giant Soviet and Japanese and other fleets that killed just millions of whales over a couple of decades before the International Whaling Commission finally issued a near total ban effective in 1986. So the whales
Right.
are important in themselves. They're important as symbols. They're important to their environment. Uh, and now we've got a test to see whether we can stop an extinction. The Baji, the Chinese river dolphin, went extinct about
Right.
2007, and now the vaquita porpoise in the Sea of Cortez is probably down to a dozen animals. So there's kind of a test of will of humans here. Can we stop these things?
Right, exactly. And one point I want to let our audience know that they are also important because, whales defecate just like everything else does. And when they do, that actually becomes food for everything else, which produces more oxygen and carbon, all of that. So they're important in so many ways, like you said, the symbolism and keeping everything in balance and actually feeding off of animals that need to be kept in control, but also giving food to animals that need to be kept in control. So it all comes back to a circle. So the other thing I want to know is there any kind of enforcement internationally that you know of for if somebody captures a whale that has been tagged, that
Oh,
the taggings that are out there, is there any kind of repercussions for that, or do we even know about it?
well, if you are part of one of the few nations that still catches whales, uh, you're probably not going to know there's a tag. It's a small thing. It's shoe size
Oh,
or
it's not a big
smaller.
thing on the fin.
Yeah, there's not a
Okay.
big, there's not a specific treaty or anything I'm aware of that says you can't catch a tag whale. The
Okay.
IWC ban from 1986 has kept all but a few nations out of the whaling business, uh, though it does not apply to the dolphins and the other small cetaceans. Does that help?
Okay. So it's harder kind of because it's such a small, it's not tracking the way you would traditionally think of, like putting a gigantic piece of suction cup where everybody can see. It's in a way that they wouldn't even know it. They wouldn't even know it's being tagged or monitored.
Well, it depends on the whale, of course. Uh,
Oh,
a,
okay.
a dorsal fin tag on a killer whale is fairly uh, visible, although, of course, nobody hunts killer whales that I know of. A tag anchored in the blubber of a very large whale, no, you're probably not going to see it until it's
Okay.
actually on alongside. But like I
Okay.
said, hopefully that's less of a problem these days.
And just on a side note, I'm not ignoring you. I have my questions in front of me, so when I look down, that's all I'm doing. I'm not ignoring you at all. Okay.
I
Um,
know.
this is a new world for me. So what can I say? Um, Tell me, I hear that you wrote a paper. Tell our audience a little bit about what the paper covered and what did it represent?
Oh, that was the paper we wrote in 2018 that we presented to the conference on small satellites, and that was um, fusing together a couple of years of research and talking to scientists and gathering data and so forth. And we presented the state of the tagging uh, business and how important it was, and we we looked at ways because there are several ways you could improve it. You could add satellites. You could add uh, you might add tags that work on commercial frequencies. There are a lot of ways to do it. But we pulled all that together and presented it hopefully in one useful collection of information. So we're really proud of that.
Good. Well, like I said, the more information we get, the better. I mean, it gives everybody more tools to work with. What what would be, in your opinion, something that our audience could do to help save the whales and protect them? I know we're in lockdown right now, and we also know this is all going to pass, but there's still things they can do even from home. What would you suggest would be a good thing for people at home to start doing?
There are really a large number of organizations that where you can fund helping whales in one way or another. I think I bought some square miles of empty ocean as a gift to someone a few years ago because it was humpback whale habitat. And I forget the organization, but one of the major environmental organizations was running that. You can adopt a piece of whale habitat. There's a lot of research organizations, Marine Mammal Lab at Oregon State, NOAA does a lot of research, Navy does. There are broader conservation centers like the Safina Center. Carl Safina wrote a book called Beyond Words, and if you want to read some really incredible things about how orcas think, killer whales, that's something you should do.
There's a reason why they're called the wolves of the sea. They are very intelligent.
But there are also professional organizations. Two of them are the Society for Marine Mammalogy and the American Cetacean Society, and they do not require you to be a degreed expert. Anyone with enough interest can join those and get their bulletins and their newsletters and so forth. And
wonderful.
There are just many ways to contribute, either financially or by sharing knowledge to helping support the whales of the world.
Well, that's great. I mean, I really appreciate you doing this. I mean, all the efforts that you've put in to help get more knowledge and get the knowledge out there is fantastic. And I really appreciate you taking your time. Is there anything that you can add that you feel our audience should know in order to move forward with any more information or discoveries?
Oh gosh, I think I'd cap it by saying that there are still species and populations in severe danger. North Atlantic right whales are about 400 and losing about 15 a year to ship collisions and fishing gear. So there's a lot of work to be done in conservation. There is a lot of work to be done in knowledge. If you love whales, it's fascinating to even just putting a Google alert on whales. We're finding new things about every species all the time. We didn't know until a few years ago that the bowheads up in the northern Pacific could live to be 200 years old.
Oh, wow.
They dug out stone harpoon points from some whales. We're
amazing.
Just learning that all the time. And the whales do need our help. They're smart, but they don't always. That doesn't mean they automatically know how to avoid humans, how to avoid ships, all of those sorts of things. So, yeah, we need to lobby on the human side for whatever you think is wise. I'm not going to prescribe here. I'm not qualified to do that. But whale conservation affects everybody.
Right.
I think
it all comes back around.
Yeah, it does. And the Pierce Brosnan, the actor, is also an ocean activist. Said the idea of a world without whales is too horrible to contemplate.
I agree. I agree 100%. Well, this has been great. Thank you very much, Matt, for taking your time out of your day to be on and helping our audience get more in touch with what's going on out in the real world. And I'd love to have you on again in the future, and maybe we can learn some more information from each other. So thank you very much, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, you can message me or you can message Matt. He is on Facebook. and just get out there. I know you can't get out there physically, I know, but get online, research, learn what you can do. These animals are precious and they're important to the ocean's ecosystem, but also our ecosystem in future. So we're all connected. We all go back to the ocean one way or the other. So this is Kimberly Ray with the Marine Conservation Network. And thank you, Matt Bille, for joining us today. And we will talk to you guys at another time. And remember, together we can make oceans a difference. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.